broadcast. CBS News coverage of Campaign 84 begins. Tonight, the Iowa caucuses. Reporting from the Civic Center in Des Moines, Iowa, here is Dan Rather.
Good evening. In the first in the nation Iowa caucuses, the first results in tonight from real live voters making real life choices, and Walter Mondale is, by CBS News estimate, the #1 choice by far. Running second by CBS News estimate, a distant second, but a solid and surprise second, Senator Gary Hart of Colorado, who spent a lot of time here in Iowa but did not have a lot of money to spend compared to the others. And with Hart, a surprise #2, get a load of who didn't even make it to #3 or 4 by the estimate of CBS News so far tonight. It isn't until you get past Mondale, Hart, Cranston, and McGovern that you get to Senator John Glenn. What's got to be a disappointment to the candidate who has been saying that he is the Democrat of the center and the principal opponent for Walter Mondale. Here's how the results translate into candidate strength on the basis of tonight's Iowa caucuses. With 62% of the caucuses reporting, our CBS News results translate into this kind of candidate strength. Remember, this is a long, complex process in Iowa. Yet to be had are the county, district, and state caucuses, but on the basis of what happened inside those caucuses tonight, Mondale 48%, Hart 16%, McGovern 10%, uncommitted 10%, Cranston 8%, John Glenn 3%, Askew 3%, Jackson 2%, and Hollings no percent, which is to say somewhat less than 1%. Now, no matter how you slice it, this was a big night, a good night, a victory party sort of night for Walter Mondale. And we spoke to the former vice president here at our CBS News headquarters a short while ago.
First of all, I just won a spectacular victory across the board with width and breadth all across the spectrum. Secondly, the issues that I'm pressing are the ones that brought Iowans to my cause: a safer world, a more competitive nation, and a fairer nation, and under a competent president. That's what gave me my energy, and those are precisely the issues that will permit me to beat Mr. Reagan.
Gary Hart's voting record in the Senate is to the right of your own, George McGovern's, Alan Cranston. Doesn't that give him a lot of room to run on your right?
As a matter of fact, my record has been a pragmatic, sensible record that I think stands up very, very well and reflects what I think the American people want. The other thing that I argue, and I'm getting a good response, is I know what I'm doing. I've not only been in that Senate, I've been in that White House, I've dealt with the Russians, I've worked with our allies. I can not only take a position, but I can argue, and I'm getting a tremendous response that I know how to get it done.
Jesse Jackson figures to be a big part of the equation in New Hampshire. Would you agree?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that is yet to be decided. The voters of New Hampshire will now be center stage.
But doesn't Jesse Jackson worry you for the distance? He's the one candidate that reporters and politicians alike agree is likely to be in there in the last primary with you.
I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm just going full speed ahead. I'm listening to the people of Iowa. I'm trying to lead this country, and we'll do the same thing in New Hampshire. It's going great.
Former Vice President and obviously a very joyful one, Walter Mondale. And at the head of the Mondale competition before tonight had been John Glenn. But unlike that February 20th in 1967, when Glenn was launched into history as the first American in orbit, this February 20th does not seem to have launched his drive for the nomination. Senator Glenn is standing by now to talk to us in Boston. Senator Glenn, good evening to you.
Good evening, Dan. How are you?
I'm not sure you consider it a good evening. What happened?
Well, on to New Hampshire. That's the next thing I guess I would say. You know, we didn't, we always expected that Mr. Mondale would take somewhere between 50 and 60% out there, and obviously I came in a little lower tonight than I had expected to come in. But on to New Hampshire, and that's the first primary state. Iowa has about 1.5% of the delegates, and while I wish I had come up a little higher in Iowa tonight, we're on to New Hampshire. We're going to be up there campaigning all week and looking forward to that next go-around a week from now.
Senator, you have to be disappointed by what happened here in Iowa. Why did it happen? Why did you finish so low?
Dan, stop hanging crepe all over it. You're reading me out of this thing before 1.5% of this thing is canceled.
Huh? It wasn't I who hung the crepe.
Oh, I know that, but we're on to New Hampshire tonight, Dan, and I'm not going to hang crepe all over thing in Iowa. You know, we didn't do as well as we expected there, and I'm very disappointed in it, of course. And some of our estimates were off there, and obviously we got out-hustled in Iowa. So we're on to New Hampshire. It's the first primary state. And that's the state where you make secret ballots. And I don't think the people in New Hampshire are going to be led around by the nose by some predetermined nomination that was made back 6 months ago or so by other people. So we're looking to do very well in New Hampshire. They're very independently minded people there, and so we're working very hard up here. We expect to do very well in New Hampshire.
Senator, what about the theory that you're out of it and it's only a question of time until you have to admit
Dan,
that?
come on now, that's nonsense. You get 1.5% of the delegates, and it's just the start of this whole thing, and you're saying we're out of it? That's ridiculous. We're on to New Hampshire. We're going to be doing big things up there next week.
Do you have the money to stay the distance, Senator?
Sure, we have the money. We borrowed some money so we could have enough to do our TV packages and so on up here, and we're expecting to do well up here. I won't make any predictions on numbers and everything, but I think to take a vote, a caucus vote, that was obviously as much influenced as it was by some of the outside influences there, and I'm not making any excuses. But to take that now and ask me if I'm out of it is preposterous. You know, we're on to New Hampshire. Let's go. We got a good organization up there. We got a lot of people working, a lot of people excited. Had Governor Celeste up there from Ohio today, and I campaigned up there all day myself. We had a lot of excitement. On to New Hampshire. I'm very up right now. I'm not down in the doldrums about this.
Thank you very much, Senator Glenn, and thank you for taking time to be with us. Susan Spencer reports now on how Walter Mondale's big victory tonight, though expected, is still sweet and still a needed boost to the Mondale campaign. Susan?
Well, Dan, this is one campaign that won't ever tell you what they expect. They simply won't deal in expectations at all. One thing they do like to point out, though, is that while tonight's victory seems almost like a foregone conclusion now, it was not that way a year ago when folks here who were betting were putting their money on Glenn and Hart in Iowa.
My name is Don Fraser.
Tonight's outcome is the result of months of politicking, door knocking, and up to 500,000 phone calls. The staff helped by union workers and busloads of volunteers, Minnesotans who know how to organize for caucuses. The next stop for many of them is New Hampshire, where they'll deal with a less predictable primary race. The organization is just as good. The margin of Mondale's lead is not so certain. His hope tonight that his huge Iowa victory will propel him into New Hampshire as the inevitable nominee and make voting for anyone else seem like throwing a vote away.
For despite all of the folderol here behind me, New Hampshire does offer some potential pitfalls. There are a lot of independent voters there. Jesse Jackson will be in the race. The field will be bigger, and the attacks of the opponents can be expected to step up in the next few days. Mondale still thinks that he can withstand it all, and tonight he is one step closer to doing what he set out to do, which was to try to narrow the field early. Dan?
Thank you, Susan. One step closer, but still a long way to go. Correspondent Lim Tucker reports now on what it's going to take if any real thrust can be restored to the Glenn campaign.
Dan, you just saw a bravo performance by Senator Glenn, who obviously is rather devastated by what has happened in Iowa. Earlier at a news conference, he reasserted his reasons for running. At times it sounded much like a concession speech as he slipped into the past tense. He says that it's really too soon to know what happened in Iowa, but it seems clear that his organization, which was never very good there, never got good enough to turn out the vote. Organizational changes at the top have hurt him. So now Alabama was expected maybe to be his last stance. There are those around here tonight, some in his own entourage, saying New Hampshire could be. He will continue to stress the message there that he represents the mainstream Democrats. He will continue to say, don't let big money, he means big labor. Don't let endorsements, he means those who endorse Walter Mondale, push you around. And then, of course, he will take his message, and I believe that he will go on to at least Alabama, because it's the one state of all right now that he really stands a chance of winning. And he will there try to play to their conservatism, as he himself has become more conservative as he's been advised to as this campaign has gone along. His job now is to keep his followers interested, his volunteers, his workers, to keep a little money coming in addition to his loan. It will not be easy after the devastating loss he suffered at the hands of Iowa's caucus voters tonight.
Thank you very much, Lynn. We'll see you in New Hampshire a little later in the week. And I'll be back in a moment with the big surprise of the Iowa caucus, Senator Gary Hart.
This portion of CBS News coverage of the Iowa caucuses is sponsored by General Motors. Extra time, extra effort, and attention to every detail. GM is committed to excellence. And by AT&T, we're reaching out in new directions.
Precise measurements, perfect fits, flawless surfaces. General Motors employees are committed to giving you nothing less. And when the shift ends, their drive for quality continues. Because GM people sign up to take one of the cars home to evaluate. This kind of extra involvement helps build better cars. Nobody sweats the details like GM.
It's the president.
At AT&T, we never know how important any call will be.
Mr. Ryan, it's the chairman.
That's why every product AT&T makes, every business system,
It's MGM.
every inch in the millions of miles of our long-distance network,
It's Rome.
and every single technical innovation is made to handle every call
It's Bobby.
as if it were the most important call in the world.
Hi.
AT&T, we're reaching out in new directions.
Gary Hart's second-place finish surprised a lot of people here in Iowa tonight. Senator Hart is in Manchester, New Hampshire this evening. First of all, Senator, congratulations on your strong showing in Iowa. But let's get right to it. You had a tremendous showing in the state of Iowa. But you got licked by only 3-1. Where do you beat Walter Mondale?
Well, I think I'll increase this margin and close the margin between the two of us in New Hampshire next week and then in the states that follow after that. This race, as I've said all along, will narrow down very quickly to the two of us, and that is a contest between this party's future and its past. And given that choice, I think the majority of Democrats will support my candidacy.
Well, Senator Hart, you're not realistically hoping to win in New Hampshire, are you? A second-place finish is the best you figure you can do there.
Well, we'll wait and see. I have refused to project any finish in Iowa, and I'll do the same thing in New Hampshire. All I'm saying is that this contest will thin itself out very quickly, and I think the contrast, the two-person race, will set itself up very, very fast.
But name one place where you are confident you can beat Walter Mondale.
Well, Mr. Rather, it wasn't too many days ago where people said I had no chance at all. I think this race has dramatically rearranged itself. We'll worry about where the showdown comes later on. All I know is that I'll be the nominee of this party.
But let us assume for the moment, ride with me here, even if you finish as high as second in New Hampshire, some considerable doubt about that given Jesse Jackson's showing in the polls up there. But let's say you finish second in New Hampshire. After that, what the political polls are saying, the pros are saying you're facing Death Valley, that there's no way that you could come out of it.
Well, Mr. Rather, those are the same pros that said all throughout 1983 that I had no chance whatsoever. So I think a lot of those pros have been discredited tonight.
What about the theory, Senator, that even if your wildest dreams come true and you get the nomination, that you're the ideal candidate for Ronald Reagan to beat?
No, I think
you're a McGovern Democrat.
Nope, it's the other way around. I'm the ideal candidate for our party to defeat Ronald Reagan. I'm the candidate that he would have the worst time dealing with in that he can't pin any past failings of our party on me. I will take charge of that race and define the issues in that race, and that will cause the incumbent president the most difficulty.
Thank you very much, Senator Hart. And again, congratulations on your strong second-place finish in Iowa this evening. For both Senator Alan Cranston and George McGovern, good showings tonight, healthy showings. For Cranston, proof that he's in the running and can make the cut, so to speak. For McGovern, perhaps a taste of the old days.
Well, I think in my case, I got my message across to enough people to do what I hoped I would do, and that's end in the top 4. It looks like I'm in 3rd. That isn't bad for a candidate who announced 7th.
This shows many of us so close that I don't think that any great conclusions can be drawn, no matter what happens here. any more valid than the conclusions drawn all year long that it was a Mondale-Glenn race, which has now been very badly shaken.
Senator Cranston, not as high a finisher as he'd hoped in Iowa, but still in the running. There are about 2,500 precincts involved in tonight's Iowa caucuses. They are held in homes, schools, community rooms, and churches. So it's hard to say that any one caucus is typical, but certainly Walter Mondale's strength was demonstrated at the caucus that Bruce Morton attended in St. Anthony's Roman Catholic Church.
Good evening. This is St. Anthony's Church. This is a precinct on the south side of Des Moines. A lot of older people here, elderly people, worried about things like Social Security and Medicare. This is a precinct in which 4 years ago went for Edward Kennedy instead of Jimmy Carter, but they don't seem to have harbored any animosity toward Carter's old running mate, Walter Mondale, because tonight they went very heavily for Walter Mondale. This precinct, the 77th in Des Moines, had 6 delegates to give out. 5 of them went to Mondale, and 1 went uncommitted. There was a certain amount of toing and froing, some hard bargaining, but that's the way it ended up. CBS News and the New York Times have also done some polling in sample precincts around the state, and we've learned a few things about Mondale's support. People said they voted for Mondale because they thought he could beat Ronald Reagan and because of his experience. Mondale, at least in the caucuses we polled, did best with older voters, best with those over 65. Then he did worse and worse as the voters got younger and younger, did worst of all with those in the 18 to 29-year-old age group. And as you might expect, Dan, he did especially well with union members. He's been endorsed, of course, by the AFL-CIO and the National Education Association, powerful forces both. So he did what he was supposed to do here fairly massively. Everybody seemed to like him, and it's a big push forward.
This wasn't entirely D-Day in Iowa, D as in Democrat, and I'll be back with the Republican candidate's share of the spotlight after first please these messages.
C'est à Emery que je fais confiance depuis 15 ans.
Dankeschön. Ich vertraue Emery, weil sie immer schnell und verlässlich sind, jawohl.
Emery, first class, international door-to-door service. It's fast, mate.
We've been delivering around the world longer than most delivery companies have been around. Emery, fast door-to-door service, trusted worldwide.
Planters dry roast peanuts? Well, well, well.
Well, your limo has arrived, sir.
Thank you, Jeeves. To the Opera House, driver. And munch on it.
Planters dry roasted peanuts. So crunchy, so full of fresh roasted flavor, they make ordinary occasions special.
What lazy bones?
Planters peanuts. You must want me to get up and cut the grass.
Nope. I just thought I'd sit here with you and watch it grow.
When you burn the candle at both ends, there's a vitamin just for you. Advanced formula stress tabs with biotin. A vitamin not found in other stress formulas. A vitamin essential to help convert food to energy. When you burn the candle at both ends, support your diet with advanced formula stress tabs with biotin, the official stress formula vitamin of the 1984 Winter Olympics.
Hello, Jean. Sorry to call so late, but I'm worried about Mike. I don't like the sound of his cough. It's very congested. Formula 44D? Thanks.
Take strength from this. Vicks Formula 44D is now twice as strong to loosen worrisome chest congestion. It also quiets coughing and helps drain nasal congestion. And it's the only leading formula that can do all that.
See, honey, nothing to worry about.
Vicks Formula 44D, made stronger to take the worry out of congested coughs.
Candidate Ronald Reagan blew into town to try a bit of scene stealing from the Democrats today, but as White House correspondent Bill Plant reports, Mr. Reagan ran into a showstopper of a poll among Iowa voters. Bill?
Well, Dan, the original reason for Mr. Reagan's decision to crush the Democrats' party was to steal some of the limelight, and that he did. The president will be on every TV broadcast and in every newspaper tonight and tomorrow. But there was another reason for this trip. It was brought into sharp focus by today's Iowa poll, which shows that the president's job rating is at its lowest point ever among Iowans. The fact is, Mr. Reagan and the Republicans are in some trouble in Iowa. The president brushed the poll aside when asked about it earlier.
I think it's what you would expect. If 8 guys have been running around this state for a year, kicking my brains out, I wouldn't expect the people to have a good opinion of that.
The thousands who turned out to see the president at 2 rallies today in Iowa obviously hadn't been paying any attention to those 8 Democrats. They liked Mr. Reagan a lot, except for the 3 or 4 people who did manage to sneak in anti-Reagan banners to one rally. The president's biggest problem in Iowa is that the farm economy still hasn't recovered from the recession, and the Democrats are charging that his administration has been unfair.
Listen carefully when you hear screeching accusations about fairness. Just below the surface, you'll hear an appeal to greed and envy, totally inconsistent with the American spirit.
That's the Reagan strategy. Stay on the offensive. Try to set the terms of the debate. The president and his aides blame their troubles here on the Democrats and think that those negatives will be neutralized as Mr. Reagan gets out and campaigns. The Democrats put a different spin on the same idea. They prefer to think that the campaign shows the president is vulnerable. But one thing's clear, Dan, Mr. Reagan just can't wait to take them on.
Thank you, Bill. And in a moment, we'll take a look at what the future may hold in New Hampshire and beyond with Bill Moyers.
Torture test after torture test, day and night. The wear and tear of 5 tough years in just 15 weeks at the General Motors Proving Grounds.
All yours, Brenda.
Even if you never put your GM car through anything like this, it's good to know we did. Nobody sweats the details like GM.
America was born with a dream that says in this great land, each and every one of us has the opportunity to build a life that's rich and rewarding. At Prudential Bache Securities, we believe in that dream. We can show you how total financial planning can bring you a richer life for today and tomorrow. Call us. We're Prudential Bache Securities. America, bring us your future.
Good health is good news. Attend the Channel 5 Health Fair.
Hello, I'm Winfield Dunn with Hospital Corporation of America. I'd like to encourage each of you to take advantage of the free examination available at any of the Channel 5 Health Fair examination sites that will take place in your neighborhood in early April. It's the responsibility of my company to underwrite the cost of the Health Fair office, and we're pleased to provide this service to our friends in the Channel 5 viewing area. I want to also congratulate the fine companies and organizations that sponsor local sites within your neighborhood. Without their help and the volunteers who work at the examination sites, the Channel 5 Health Fair would be impossible. Again, let me encourage each of you to take advantage of this service.
The 1984 Channel 5 Health Fairs will take place April 7th through 15th.
Now let's talk about what do tonight's results from the Great Plains and dark dirt of Iowa hold for next week on the mountains in the Rocky Valleys of New Hampshire. Bob Schieffer reports it may be more of the same for Walter Mondale and maybe even for John Glenn.
Dan, whatever else may be said about whatever happened to any other candidate tonight, the first thing to be said is that Walter Mondale won big. And when you talk about the impact of Iowa on New Hampshire, it's hard to see how winning big can hurt you anyway. The second thing to be said when you consider the very poor showing that John Glenn made in Iowa tonight is that the Mondale people here may have put together an even better campaign organization than the one that brought victory to Walter Mondale in Iowa tonight. In contrast, the Glenn campaign here organized late, has had a difficult time of it, is just now getting itself organized. Glenn was here today looking for votes, but from every indication we have here, he has his work cut out for him. It is difficult to see how anything that happened in Iowa tonight is going to help John Glenn here. The Hart people are going to try to make the most of what happened tonight, and certainly it does give their campaign here a lift, and certainly they have a well-organized and well-run campaign here. But it seems to me it's a little too early to say that anyone is really broken out of that second tier of candidates. What may have happened is that John Glenn may have fallen out of the first tier and that Walter Mondale stands there alone. So what it amounts to in the bottom line, I think, Dan, is that John Glenn simply has to get something going here in New Hampshire next week. You cannot get the kind of numbers that John Glenn got tonight in Iowa and keep a campaign going.
Thank you, Bob. Between the New Hampshire primary and what's come to be called Super Tuesday, Maine, Vermont, and Wyoming also will choose delegates. And on March 13th, Super Tuesday, 9 states will choose about 16% of all the delegates to the Democratic National Nominating Convention in San Francisco. Bill Moyers with tonight's results in. The question for openers is, can anybody stop Mondale, realistically?
It depends on the anybody. The sooner this race becomes a two-man race, the more likely it is that somebody will chase Mondale closer than if 2 or 3 are still in the race. And that depends upon the catalytic effect that New Hampshire has on Massachusetts, etc. If Walter Mondale gets everything he expects to get between now and the 30th of March, he will still be 1,000 delegates short of the nomination. That means some candidate coming in has enough time and enough opportunity to perhaps narrow that gap. Let's assume that Gary Hart does better in New Hampshire than he expected to do because of his showing tonight. He still has to have one big win somewhere in there. That could either be Massachusetts, but that takes a lot of money and a lot of volunteers, or it could be, as some of his people were saying tonight, New York, where Hart is perceived to be an alternative to Mondale by a lot of the traditional voters in New York. Obviously, Hart's strategy is now to try to get the anti-establishment vote. No matter how you cut it, Walter Mondale is the candidate of the Democratic establishment. Gary Hart's success will depend, if he does well in New Hampshire, on saying to people, I am the alternative to the establishment. There is an anti-establishment vote in the Democratic Party. Always is. That's the nature of the party. Tonight, for example, our survey shows that the people who voted for Hart, 2/3 of them did because he represents new ideas, and nearly half of them did because he represents no special interest. So you're getting a split here between the traditional Democratic constituency and coalition and the Hart, Mondale, the Hart, McGovern, Cranston anti-establishment. If Hart could get the money, the spirit, and the volunteers to hold beyond New Hampshire into Massachusetts, do well in Massachusetts and New York, he conceivably could begin to offer a real attraction as an alternative. The wild card, as someone has said, is Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson originally was said to be a spoiler because he'd take black votes away from Mondale. There are no black votes in New Hampshire. There are only liberal votes for him to take away. Watch Jesse Jackson next week. See if the white enthusiasm and the speeches he's been given translates to any vote. Then you'll see if Mondale's pulling ahead or whether one person emerges is to start chasing him.
Thank you, Bill. Now we'll take a final look at the numbers tonight and what they may mean. In the Iowa caucuses this evening, the expected big winner, Mondale winning very big in the Iowa precinct caucuses. A surprise number 2 by our CBS News estimate of the caucus results. Gary Hart making it all the way up to number 2 in the first cut of the candidates. Alan Cranston, thought to have an Iowa campaign organization second to none, but Walter Mondale is estimated running third by CBS News is Cranston. And George McGovern running next down the line. And not until now do you get to the candidate who said that he is Walter Mondale's chief competitor, Senator John Glenn. Now, this is how tonight's precinct caucus results translate into candidate strength here in Iowa. The caucuses were held all over the state, and with 69% of the caucuses reporting, Walter Mondale's results should translate into 49% strength for him, 17% for Hart, 10% for McGovern. Perhaps one of the surprises of the night, uncommitted, actually finishing 4th, 9%. Cranston, 7%. Glenn, the disappointing 3%. Askew, Jackson, and Hollings. Hollings shows 0, which actually means less than 1% for Hollings, who did not campaign in Iowa. Now, we figure that this will translate, when all is said and done in Iowa, the 50 delegates at stake tonight for the National Nominating Convention in San Francisco, that Walter Mondale, on the basis of his showing tonight, will get 22 of those 50 delegates from Iowa. George McGovern will get 1. John Glenn will get none. And that all the other candidates will probably wind up getting various numbers out of this state. But the big winner tonight, unquestionably, Walter Mondale, and he will get the lion's and winner's share of the delegate strength from the state of Iowa. And so this evening, the end of the beginning of Campaign 84, the Iowa Precinct Caucuses, first in the nation. First time in Campaign 84 where best guesses gave way to real live choices. Next week, on to the next test of the system, the first in the nation New Hampshire primary. Until then, for CBS News, Dan Rather in Des Moines. Good night.
Introducing technology is one thing. Making it easy to use is another. So at AT&T, we not only have people who know machines, but people who know people. A group of over 150 psychologists who test people's reactions to new products to find out what they're comfortable with and what they're not. You see, we believe even the most advanced technology is of little use if people are afraid of using it. AT&T, we're reaching out in new directions.
People get a lot of fish out of these waters, and Sun Company gets a lot of oil. Over 3 million barrels a year. We know that sea life was here long before we were. This is a drill. That's why we have practice drills like this. In case of a spill, our containment unit would quickly surround the oil and help prevent damage. At Sun, we think putting our energy back into the environment is as important as getting it out.
Where there's sun, there's energy. This portion of CBS News coverage of the Iowa caucuses was sponsored by Sun Company, where there's energy, and by Emory. We've earned the trust of business worldwide. This is CBS.
Magnum's crazy friend drops in, and it's downhill from there.
You're destroying Robin's wall.
You sound exactly like Higgins. And it sounds like the turning point for friends on Magnum PI. Then, what do a blockbuster movie and jewel heist have in common? A guest appearance by the same cop. Larry Hagman and Dennis Weaver discover making movies can be dead serious on McCloud.
Tuesday night at 10:30 on Channel 5. What would happen if